Discover the best in local business news with a subscription to the IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. For a limited time, try us out for just $1 a week for 8 weeks. Claim this limited time offer now at ibj.com/trial offer.
Well, do not let it stop you if you haven't done something before. So many times I had no business stepping into, I had never run a presidential campaign before, and I got asked to do it. And right away I was like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. Run a 65-country government-to-government organization. No problem. Had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I'd figure it out. And pretty much anybody can too.
Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in Indiana. Today, I'm joined by Indiana Secretary of Energy and Natural Resources, Suzanne Jaworowski. Appointed by Governor Mike Braun, Secretary Jaworowski is tasked with helping Indiana navigate its energy future. She brings a wealth of private and public sector experience to the role, most recently serving as Executive Director of Stakeholder Services at MISO Energy, which operates the electric grid for the entire country. Her experience in energy policy includes serving as Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor for Policy in the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Nuclear Energy during President Trump's first administration. While working for the Department of Energy, she chaired the International Framework for Nuclear Energy Cooperation, a 65-country government-to-government initiative on safeguards, security, and development for nuclear energy. She later moved to Vienna, Austria, where she worked for the International Atomic Energy Agency, an organization that promotes the safe, secure, and peaceful use of nuclear technologies. Before working in the first Trump administration, Secretary Jaworowski directed communications and government relations at Hallador Energy and founded Ryder Research Consulting, where she advised energy companies, utilities, and industry associations. Among the challenges we're going to dive into, Secretary Jaworowski and her staff are focusing on Indiana is the enormous power demand associated with data centers that will power the technologies of the future, including artificial intelligence, of course, and making sure there are diverse energy sources to power Hoosier homes and businesses for years to come. Secretary Jaworowski, welcome to the Indiana 250 podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. I want to thank you for partnering with us with IBJ in an event we did a couple months ago on nuclear energy in particular. It was a great pleasure to work with you on that summit. So welcome to the Indiana 250 podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, Nate. I really appreciate it.
Well, I look forward to the conversation. First, I want our audience to get to know you a little bit in terms of where you grew up, and we'll get to, for sure, how you became so interested and knowledgeable and an expert on the energy side. But talk about where you grew up and what that was like for a young Secretary Jaworowski.
Sure, great. Well, I grew up in Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and a kid of the 80s. So, big hair, drove a Mustang convertible in high school, and had a lot of fun back in those days. Really enjoyed my friends, played softball. I was a cheerleader, loved being in school, close-knit family growing up, and really never imagined myself moving to the Midwest. I can tell you that right now.
So what was it? By the way, I'm a kid of the 80s too. So, I drove a Pontiac Firebird, so not too far away from where you were. But how did you end up then in Indiana?
My husband's job.
Yeah.
My husband worked for America Online. And when I say that, everybody thinks of that dial-up sound. Yeah, that sound.
Yeah.
And that his job took us all over the place. We lived in Toronto, Canada, and then Philadelphia, 3 years in Terre Haute, Indiana, where we really fell in love with the Midwest. We have 4 kids within the space of 5.5 years. And
Wow.
so having little children all together so close like that, that being in the Midwest was a great place. And we found a quality of life here that we didn't really see on the East Coast, that, hustle bustle kind of lifestyle. Then we were in upstate New York and Binghamton, New York, and then Buffalo, New York. And then my husband had an opportunity to move back here to Indianapolis. And I said, let's go back to Indiana. People have their head on straight there. It's good cost of living. And we love it here. We moved to Fishers and we never looked back. We've been there since 2010.
So I didn't mention in the intro, you're a Radford University graduate, and that's not, I think you're the first, I think I've done about maybe 45 of these, and podcasts with Off the Record. And you're the first Radford graduate, I believe. So tell me about Radford.
Go Highlanders. So Radford University is in Southern Virginia, just over the mountains from Virginia Tech, near Blacksburg. And it was a great school to go to. I chose to study business with a concentration in marketing. I was always fascinated with the creative side of marketing and really looking for that thing that makes consumers interested in one product over another. It's not, I never was the creative side of marketing. I wasn't the copywriter side, the designer side, the graphic designer side, but I was able to do the market research side where I was able to say, okay, what is it that entices a person to choose one thing over another when you're looking at 10 options on the shelf and you choose one thing? Why do you choose Coke versus Pepsi and one brand over another? And so I made that my career, and it was really great. And it worked out really well when our children were little and I stayed home. That's when I started doing writer research consulting. We had our children, they were little, and I wanted to be able to be home and be present for them, but I also wanted to keep my hand in business a little bit. And so I started doing consulting work. I did market research and communication strategy and became kind of the voice of the consumer, where I really listened to consumers, whether it was in surveys, focus groups, man on the street interviews, things like that, to try to understand what it is that creates that kind of hook and connection with a brand. And then I would write the creative briefs, and then the creative team would make that come alive in an advertising campaign. And I loved doing that work, and I could do it from home long before work from home was a thing.
That's cool.
And that's what writer research consulting was all about. And I ended up having a lot of clients in the energy industry.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So is that how you first were first exposed to the energy? Was it through writer consulting? And then talk a little bit how that exposure led to you having a career really in the energy sector.
That is. So I had a lot of clients in the energy industry. Some were utilities, some were advocacy groups, all different kinds of clients, really. Some were fuel sales. And then when we moved back to Indiana the second time, I had a friend, and he was starting Sunrise Coal and Hallador Energy. And he and his wife were friends of ours from when we lived in Terre Haute. And they were starting Hallador Energy, and he wanted me to come and do public relations and communications for the company. And I wasn't sure, because the last time I had seen them, they were working in a cornfield in Riley, Indiana, out of a camper, like a, what do they call it? Like a
trailer. Yeah.
They were 5 guys working in a trailer in a cornfield. And I was like, I don't think I want to work in the trailer with the guys in the cornfield. Like, I don't mean to be a snob, but I didn't think I wanted to do that. And he was very persistent, wanted to hire me to do that. He said, I really need you. I need somebody who can do PR, communications. We went back and forth. So finally, he kind of wore me down, and I was like, okay, I'll come to work and do that. So I didn't know that, but in the time that we had been moved out of Indiana, Hallador Energy had gone public on the NASDAQ. He hired 300 people. They had a beautiful office space on the south side of Terre Haute. They had grown up as a company.
No longer a trailer.
And I was so impressed, and I thought, oh, okay, yes, this is great. And it worked out really well. And I learned so much working there. They were the second largest coal company in the Midwest, and then also had some natural gas work. I did the communications, government affairs, also did a little bit of investor communications. It was great. I learned so much from Hallador Energy, and it also gave me a chance to start working in government affairs. I started to get to know the political landscape in Indiana, and that also brought me on a whole new trajectory.
Sure. So somehow you end up working in the first Trump administration. I mean, I can see how that might progress to that, but it's a focus on nuclear energy, which is a a topic that I know you're talking a lot about in this state. The state is putting incentives in place to promote and have us move in that direction for all the reasons we'll talk about. But you served as Chief of Staff, Senior Advisor on the nuclear energy at the U.S. Department of Energy during the first Trump administration. You were there basically the full almost the entire first 4 years
Correct,
of the Trump administration. Talk about how that happened and that role a little bit. It seems like a pretty interesting place to be.
So it's kind of a funny story. I had run the Trump campaign as the state campaign director in 2016 for both the primary and then the general election. And when the election was over and President Trump won with our governor as vice president, it was very exciting. But then the day after the campaign was over, I thought, oh, now I don't have a job.
Right.
But a few weeks later, I got an email and was able to apply for the administration. And I thought about it and I went ahead and applied and didn't think anything more of it. And my husband and I were heading out to D.C. for the inauguration. And about 2 weeks before the inauguration, I got an email on a Monday night and it said, "Congratulations, you've been selected as a presidential appointee." And the only place I had put down that I'd like to work, you could choose 3 agencies as your choice. And most people ask for the White House or Department of Defense or, State Department, these exciting places that you hear about all the time. And I only put Department of Energy because I had worked in energy so much and I really felt that our energy policy as a country needed to be recalibrated a bit. And so I put Department of Energy, and that's probably why I got chosen, because there weren't very many people with energy backgrounds that wanted to go to energy. And so I was chosen to go, and I thought it was a prank. I mean, I was like, really? And I showed my husband, and I'm like, do you think this is real? And he's like, I don't know, just let's see what happens. Say yes. If it doesn't work out, let's see. We're going anyway. We'll be out there. So I said yes, and then all these things started coming, getting me prepped. And so we went for the inauguration, and my husband went for the celebration and to witness the inauguration. And I was told to report to the Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy. So I show up at the door at the Department of Energy, really didn't know what I was in for. There were 9 other people standing there, also colleagues of mine that I had never met before. Someone standing there with the key to the U.S. Department of Energy, opens up the doors, lets us in, escorts us up to the Secretary's office. We all take our oath of office the moment after President Trump takes his oath of office. And then we were there to work and to start setting up. We were the beachhead team landing there. I didn't even know what a beachhead was. And so and some people, thank God, had been there before and done it before, and they led us and showed us what to do. And it was great because it was people from all over the country who the president knew had worked for him on the campaign.
Wow.
And was dedicated and trusted in him, and he had trusted in us. And we all worked together, and very quickly we got to go around the whole agency. And over the first few months, we did briefings in every office. And when I did the briefing in the Office of Nuclear Energy, I had always admired nuclear energy. I didn't really understand it very well, but I admired it. And when I did the briefing there, I thought, this industry hasn't told their story very well.
Yeah.
And they need to tell their story better. And I feel like that's something I could do. I wasn't a scientist, I wasn't an engineer, but I was a good communicator.
Yeah.
And I thought I can help them tell their story. And so I asked the Secretary's office to be placed in the Office of Nuclear Energy, and that's where I worked.
And so you were there for basically the first
almost
term?
the whole 4 years.
Yeah.
I left when I went to the International Atomic Energy Agency. I left September of 2020.
And so let's turn to that, to when you left for the International Atomic Energy Agency. But you led, let me back up. So you led an international framework for nuclear energy cooperation. That was 65 countries that were engaged in that process around safeguards, security, and further development of the sector. But gosh, I cannot only imagine, how do you get 65 countries to agree on anything? That must have been quite an experience.
It was. And I think I have sort of a habit of raising my hand when I think there's something that I'm interested in or I'd like to do before I really think through, do I have the capability, skills, and experience to do this? I don't, a lot of people I don't know. I probably raised my hand too easily to do stuff like that. But in that particular situation, it is a 65 country organization. The United States had led it for a long time. Then Argentina was in charge of it for a long time. Their leader had to step down because they had a change in politics, and he was a great leader. And I saw that the United States the president had said that the United States needed to revitalize, and expand the U.S. civil nuclear industry. And we were told that U.S. nuclear energy was coming back. We needed to come back strong. And it's an international industry. We needed to show that strongly, that the U.S. was back in business there. And in that IFNEC organization, China and Russia wanted to take over the leadership of that organization. And I happened to be at a meeting in Japan where they were discussing who was going to be the next leader there. And China and Russia were making moves. They wanted to take over leadership.
Yeah.
And so I said, I want to run for chairman. And everybody around me was like, no one gave you clearance to do that. And I said, I want to run, because I knew the United States needed to lead on that. And so it was one of those things where, like, are you crazy? What are you doing? And I'm thinking to myself, should I do this? Should I not? Anyway, I ended up putting my name in the hat. I won that chairmanship, and it turned out to be a great experience. And I felt great unity in that organization. And it was a place where the Chinese and the Russians were very hospitable in that environment. And so were all of our organizations. All of the countries were able to come together because it is a place where we look at safeguard security. The nuclear industry really does share a lot in that environment because it is all about safety.
Yeah.
And so it was a great opportunity for me. And I look back on it, and I'm really glad that I took that opportunity. And then we ended up hosting the IFNEC event in Washington, D.C. at the White House. And we had the Secretary of Energy help to host it. And we had several U.S. senators there. And it showed that, yes, indeed, the United States was back in the nuclear industry again.
That's neat. So how would you sum up your first, the first 4 years under the Trump administration, your experience living in D.C., being part of that? How would you summarize those days, your experience?
Well, I learned a lot, jumped in, and just had to, drinking from the fire hose is what everybody says all the time. But yes, that's what happened. You definitely had to absorb a lot, make decisions quickly, rely on your colleagues, ask a lot of good questions. And it was an incredible experience. And I'd say the whole time was all by the grace of God and just leaning on instincts and the Holy Spirit all the time, and it was the kind of thing that I could never have plotted my path to be there on my own. And I knew that. Yeah. And so, it was an incredible experience the whole time, from the time that I was asked to run that campaign to the time that I ended up in Washington, D.C., to then being in Vienna, Austria. If somebody had asked me to plot out that career, that never could have even occurred to me in my wildest dreams. So
talk about so you leave the Trump administration and you head to Vienna. Mm-hmm. Talk about what that was like.
Yeah, it was the longest job interview I ever had. I had been encouraged to apply for the job. It's the top job at the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's a staff position, not an ambassadorship or anything like that. It was the Deputy Director General for Management, which is always a U.S. position at the International Atomic Energy Agency. The person who had been there before had announced retirement, hadn't left yet, and there were a lot of people interested in that job, and the ambassador there asked me to apply for it. And so once again, I'm like, okay, might as well. My kids were all either in college or off on their own. My husband thought it would be a great adventure. We were heading into empty nest time. And so we I went ahead and applied for it. I interviewed for it in January when the Director General happened to be in Washington, D.C., and then I didn't hear anything for months. And I would check in with him, and I knew that the Secretary of Energy and the Secretary of State were telling him, and they narrowed it down to two people, myself and one other colleague. And the U.S. government kept saying, you've got to make a decision. You've got to make a decision. That was 2020. It was the year of the campaign. And I know the Director General wanted to wait and see what was going to happen with the election. And I understand that. But the Trump administration didn't want to wait that out. And they said, you have to pick somebody. And so he chose me. We knew each other well before that because he was part of IFNEC. And so he chose me to come out. He said, I want to make you a consultant and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'll be there. And I don't think he thought I would really show up, but I came and I was there from October through December by myself. And then my husband showed up. It was during COVID, so October of 2020. Most everything, there was a much more severe lockdown in Vienna than there was here in the U.S. I lived at an Airbnb. Many of my colleagues at the IAEA, very international place. I mean, there's people from all over the world working there. They were work from home, staggered different times. Everybody's wearing masks. It was a hard time to get to know other people. But it was interesting because still we're human beings, we're social animals, and people started to invite me to their homes because we couldn't meet for dinner at restaurants and things like that. So it was a much more intimate way to get to know my colleagues. And so they'd invite me into their homes. I'd get to know their families, and we really became tight friends. And I made friends from all over the world while I was there, and I still am in touch with them now. And it was just an amazing experience. Then my husband joined me, and we were there until the spring of 2021, and then came back to the States together, and we were really happy to come back. And the State Department, there was a change of administration, and they said, come on back. They wanted to put a Biden person in that position, which was fine. We were happy to come back to Indiana, but it was a great adventure, and I felt really lucky to have that time over there.
Sounds like an incredible adventure. Well, more ahead with Susie Jaworowski, Indiana Secretary of Energy and Natural Resources, when we return to Off the Record, presented by Prolific. Stay with us. Welcome back to Off the Record Podcast. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media. I'm talking with Susie Jaworowski, Indiana Secretary of Energy and Natural Resources. Susie, I want to turn now closer to home and talk about your work here as Energy Secretary in the Braun administration. And I know one of the Braun administration's goals is to make sure the state can meet its energy needs, of course, using lots of diverse sources of power. We keep hearing, and we've talked about.
This episode is brought to you by Prolific, the growth firm,
needs
helping
of the
visionary leaders accelerate growth.
AI
this fall, we're bringing that mission to life with the Prolific
fast,
Growth Summit,
and that we simply cannot produce enough power today with our existing energy infrastructure to power the needs of the future. And I know as
Goldman Sachs,
we've talked about, nuclear energy is going to be and needs to be for this country, and certainly here in Indiana, a part of that future. Talk a little bit about kind of how the Braun administration, how your office is approaching those needs.
That's such an important topic, Nate, and I really appreciate the way that you framed it. And I want to be really clear because moving into the future, we know there is massive demand. There's a surge of demand for energy coming. Right now, we have plenty of energy to meet our needs. We know that if we do not make changes, we won't be able to meet our needs in the future. And that's why we're being so aggressive right now. And we will be able to meet our demand in the future. Governor Braun is being very aggressive and ambitious. He's setting a goal of 8 years. He wants to be able to deploy SMRs and advanced nuclear in the state within 8 years. We're also very much bullish on being able to develop additional natural gas in the state. We're really blessed in Indiana that we have lots of pipelines throughout throughout the north and south part of the state, running in all different directions in the state. We have great access to the ability to be able to utilize renewable resources here in the state. And really, frankly, one of our big challenges is that being able to site energy development, whether it's a gas plant, a gas line, different, renewables, that's a real challenge. And the governor and the state, it's a home rule state here. We believe in the rights of landowners and the rights of communities. But we also are living in a time where we have got to come together as Americans. This is the year that we're moving into the celebration of America 250.
Right.
And I think we need to really call on that spirit of America and that can-do, come together and unity to ask our communities to really think about, like, when we built our lines, our grid, look at all of the poles that you see every single day. People had to give up the opportunity to, have some plot of land there to put those poles up. And the substations have to go in. All those things we are looking at a Hoover Dam moment. We are looking at a Manhattan Project moment. We are going to have to build nuclear plants, more gas plants, renewables. And Indiana really wants to be a leader on this front. And so Governor Braun is prepared to help facilitate with the utility industry. And so we want to be able to encourage the communities that want to join with the state, and especially this opportunity that the legislation 1007, the House Bill 1007 that came out this year, that says large load industrial users have to pay 80% of that cost. So they will pay 80% of the cost or more. A lot of utilities are saying if you want heavy industry and you need a lot of electricity, you have to pay more than 80%. So they're avoiding what the ratepayers would have to pay for that development of energy. Plus, they're a big customer that helps spread out the cost of that and will help us deploy and build that infrastructure. The same goes for water. Indiana has lots of water. Yeah. We are not at a situation where we're going to run out of water. We do not have a problem with that. The challenge we have is moving the water around the state.
Right.
The governor has issued an executive order to do water inventory and create a statewide water plan. We're working on that now. And we have industry partners who are helping us with that. So the future is bright. We will absolutely have plenty of energy and water, but we have to come together to make that happen.
Yeah, and energy in general is not a partisan issue, right? I mean, we all need the energy. It's going to power our future. I've noted that a state like New York that kind of pushed nuclear energy out under a prior Democratic governor term, now with a new Democratic governor, is actually going forward with nuclear energy plans. So it certainly doesn't appear to be there shouldn't be a partisan issue. It's to your point, like, how do we come together? We built this highway system. People, to your point, gave up a lot of land when we did that. This is just another area that we've got to come together, and our competitiveness with China and anywhere else in the world depends on it, right? The innovation depends on it, us getting it right.
Yes, yeah. We have got to be competitive and win the AI race. I mean, it's not just a matter of databases or data centers. And data centers, there's all different kinds of data centers, and they're evolving a lot. And so, people think of data centers, they use up a lot of electricity and water. Well, there are designs where they don't even have to use water. There are air-cooled data centers. There are AI data centers that use a lot of electricity. There are data centers that use less electricity. So there's just a lot of options in between. But as a country, we don't want to turn over that industry to our adversaries. And it's just really important that we come together to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And Governor Braun is an all-of-the-above policy when it comes to energy, and we intend to be able to deploy that.
So the regulatory environment is changing. Going back to nuclear energy for a minute, it's changing on the national level. And certainly, you mentioned some legislation that we've started here in Indiana as well. A lot of listeners may not know how much power we're already getting in this country, and that we're a leader in nuclear energy in terms of the number of nuclear energy plants, and the fact that 20%, right? I got it right, comes from today. Our energy comes from nuclear energy. We've, of course, been using it in the military for years and years. But talk about some people are concerned about the safety and so forth. But talk about, what, from your perspective, why it just makes so much sense for us to really go to work on this.
Well, the safety case is amazing. I mean, people think of nuclear and they get nervous because they think of nuclear like nuclear bombs. But really, you can also say the same for gas. I mean, gas, you can make bombs with gas. You can make bombs with hydrogen. Nuclear energy is among the most safe form of energy there is, especially the way we do it in the United States. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission is the premier of any in the world. In fact, nuclear is on par with hydrogen in terms of a safety record for using electricity. But really, the way that the nuclear industry is set up, we've been, people will say to you who are against nuclear industry, there are a lot of folks who just, if it's not renewables, they don't want to talk about anything. And so sometimes people get very tribal about that kind of thing. But the reality is that small modular reactors are the same exact technology that's been on the back of submarines and different kinds of technology in the nuclear navy for over 60 years. So we have been using small modular reactors. And even the advanced reactor technology that has not yet been built in the United States is ready to be built now. So people will say, oh, it's 10 years away. It's not 10 years away from development. It's 10 years away. It may be 10 years to build it. Really, the reality with the changes that the federal government is making, the president has issued executive orders for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to shorten the time frame to certify it and regulate it. And so we're looking at really, it could be built within 6 years. 8 years is certainly a very doable time frame. For some of the microreactors, we could really be seeing microreactors in 3 to 5 years from now. And so they are a reality. We're going to be seeing them very soon. And it's an exciting time in the energy industry.
Yeah.
There's something, I used to work for Rick Perry when he was the Secretary of Energy, and he's just a very dynamic person. And one of the things he used to say is, Susie, we need to make nuclear cool again. Do you think we can make nuclear cool again? And so my answer is always yes on stuff like that. And really what he was saying is that nuclear is a perception issue. It's got an image problem. And so I think the industry has done a much better job in the last 5 to 10 years of educating people and trying to get rid of the image that The Simpsons has drawn about nuclear energy, and telling the story of what these small modular reactors are really all about. And it's cool stuff. And people are starting to learn about it. And it's going to be powering our homes. It'll be there for generations. And you've heard me say this before, but I think it's a great analogy because, we do need all of the above in Indiana. And Hoosiers deserve the best of the best, because when you have good energy infrastructure, it makes everything else better. It draws every kind of industry. If we were here saying, well, we don't have enough electricity, do you think that industry is going to want to come set up business here? Do you think even people are going to want to have their homes here? No, we have to have the best electric infrastructure we can have. So that means renewables, gas and solar, geothermal, biodiesel, whatever we need, whatever we can use that's efficient, effective, reliable, sustainable, and nuclear in that set. But I always say, renewables are like bicycles, and cars and trucks are like natural gas and coal, and nuclear is like tanks. And we need all those things. They all do something different. Don't expect a bicycle to do what a tank can do. You sometimes need a tank, you sometimes need a bicycle, and all the time you need cars and trucks.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that Hoosiers have everything.
So I want you to comment on this sign. Welcome to the powerhouse. My assistant Jenny is super good at dropping these little eggs. What do they call them? Easter eggs of people's interests and so forth, or something that's associated with them. And she's got Diet Coke as well, which you're a fan of. I am too. But tell me about welcome to the powerhouse.
So the powerhouse. So Parvani Stover is my chief of staff, and she and I have our offices. We feel really lucky. We're in the governor's suite, but our offices are downstairs in the basement, almost tucked under the stairs on the east side of the State House. And it's kind of like where the boiler room would be, in a basement. And we like it because we call it the powerhouse. It's like where the power systems would be, and because it's energy and natural resources. So we came up with the concept that it's the powerhouse, and we made a little logo and put a sign up where our little suite of offices are, and we call it the powerhouse. ENR for Energy and Natural Resources, established 2025. So that's our little logo and branding for our office space.
Love it.
Yeah.
So outside, you mentioned water, and we've talked about nuclear energy. What other priorities from your perspective, the governor's perspective, are you really focused on, your office focused on?
So we have IDEM, Indiana Department of Environmental Management, which is really something for us to be proud of in Indiana. It's interesting. That's another area where there's really some misperceptions, misunderstandings. They have very robust air and water and land testing. And with that, better than average testing gives really accurate results, better than what some of our neighbors do. And so we can look worse than some of our neighbors on air quality. And so we look like we're worse than some of our neighbors on air quality, when really we're just better testers and better on reporting. And we happen to have very good air quality. And we have a great team of people in IDEM. So I'm really proud of the people we have in IDEM. And I really like the fact that we stand up in IDEM. Our philosophy is very much, we want to make sure that everybody knows the rules and everybody abides by the rules. We protect our natural resources here, but we also work with our industries to try to get them to yes, so that they are compliant and we're protecting our resources, and we have a harmonious relationship as much as humanly possible to do that. And so, again, it's a very business-friendly environment, but we are very serious about protecting the environment. And then we also, in our vertical, have the Department of Natural Resources, and everybody loves the state parks, and so that's a lot of fun. And we're just super proud of we have 10 agencies in our vertical. We've got a lot of fun stuff, and we enjoy working with the more than 2,600 people on our team. And so I feel super lucky to be involved with all those folks.
That's great. So I want to turn to the topic of public service. We've talked about some of your public experiences, Department of Energy, at the national level, now Department of Energy and Natural Resources Secretary for the Braun administration. You clearly are enjoying and have had great opportunities to serve. But I want to talk about you. You ran for public office some years ago, the Indiana House of Representatives, right? Mm-hmm. And that was 2022, so it wasn't that long ago, but you lost by 6 votes, which,
that's correct.
Often people will say, oh, my vote's not going to matter. For sure that every vote matters.
Every vote counts.
So talk a little bit about that experience and and kind of how you think about public service.
Yes. So my dad was in the House of Delegates in Virginia, and I always was very proud that he did that. And it gave me a taste for that, and it always made me think that, gee, that's something that perhaps I could do. And I always admired that, and so that's kind of why I had that in mind. But always liked the idea of being able to serve like that. And so running for office is extremely hard. And I have a lot of respect for the people who run for office and year after year, especially the ones that have a 2-year cycle.
Right.
I mean, you're pretty much running for office all the time, every day. It's true. And I actually think that running for office is much harder than the actual job you're running for. So I have a lot of respect for those folks. But yes, I ran in the primary and lost by 6 votes. And I think it's such a lesson. I feel like, you leave no stone unturned. And at the time, I felt that I was doing everything I could. But looking back, I think, I have a lot of girlfriends who have kids in college. And if I had gone to all my girlfriends with absentee ballots and said, ladies, give these to all your college student kids. And I mean it, like send them out, or I'll drive to Purdue one afternoon and IU the next and give them to all your kids.
Yeah.
That could have made the difference. You know, it's those 6 votes. But also, I think I'm really resilient on those things because I feel like God has a plan for everything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as much as I felt disappointed because I asked all my friends and family to support me with time, talent, and treasure, and I take that very seriously, and I felt bad that I let them down after they all worked so hard to help me. But I also always know that God has a plan, and so I am very grateful to be in the opportunity that the governor gave me to serve in this capacity here today. So things always seem to turn out the way they're supposed to.
So would you ever consider running for office again? Would you never say never? Or how do you think about public service in the future after this role?
It is not something that I plan to pursue at all.
Yeah.
You know, if I felt that God was calling and tugging on my heart, you know, perhaps maybe, but it's not something I would like to pursue at all. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity here and now. And I really try not to make plans for the future. I'll see where the road takes me.
Yeah. So you've had so many interesting opportunities in life. Have there been mentors along the way? I always ask people that I interview on the Indiana 250 podcast about mentors, and because we have a lot of young people who listen and want to learn. How did Susie Jaworowski get to where she is? So did you have any mentors that were important to you along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people say their parents were mentors, and I'd say both my parents in different ways. My mother definitely was like a best friend to me, and she was always calm. And my father had a law practice, and my mother ran his office, and she also had a bunch of businesses of her own out of that office. So she did people's taxes. She had a title insurance business, and she did different kinds of businesses that were offshoots of like my dad's law firm.
Okay.
And so she would come home at 5:00 at night and be so pleasant and make dinner and be listening to all of our day's stories of the day, and everything was calm all the time. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. But when I became a mother and I was a working mom, I thought, how did she do that? You know, and she came home and she was really running the show at work and at home and just calm all the time. So definitely my mother, but also, especially when I've moved into this role, I think about Rick Perry a lot. Like he is such an inspiring person. He's somebody who brings literally, and this is a pun, but you know, he brings the energy every place he goes. When he meets somebody, he connects with them in such a sincere way. He always finds some way to personally connect with everybody. And it's very inspiring to watch. And I never saw him get flustered as a leader. He always tried to find a productive way through every challenge. And so I have to say, as I've had this opportunity to be a leader of a lot of agency heads and a lot of people within that organization, he comes to mind a lot as somebody I look at as a mentor.
That's neat. That's really neat. Since you're in the capacity that you're in, working for the state of Indiana, I thought it'd be interesting to hear your take on if there's one thing that you could do, if you could wave a magic wand and say, gosh, let's do this in Indiana, that could really ramp up our progress as a state. From any perspective you want to take that question, but what is something that could really help move Indiana forward in a positive way? Maybe it's, you know, adding more people, adding more jobs, but what would that might look like?
Well, I'm going to say the obvious thing, but it would be so meaningful if we could truly just build the energy that we really need, and there were no holds barred. You know, if money weren't an issue, if zoning weren't an issue, if we could bring all the technology and resources to build modern electricity and that's what could truly make us the best in the nation. Because if you have that energy infrastructure, we would bring manufacturing from all over the world here to Indiana, because we have the workforce tools, we have the political alignment to do it, we have the educational system, we have great land. We have great infrastructure of all kind. We have a good cost of living. It's a wonderful place to live and raise a family.
Right.
If we had that electricity infrastructure, it would be so amazing for the state.
Yeah.
I'd love it.
Yeah. Well, we don't have unlimited money and no regulatory. I mean, there are regulatory barriers, but I mean that does sound like a great one. That would add instantly to our growth and prosperity. So
Yep.
I like it. So we've made it to off the record speed round, where I ask you some fun questions.
Okay, fantastic.
And maybe we'll get to know you a little bit more. So it's always a fun opportunity to ask our guests your favorite. We'll start with your favorite movie.
Okay, well, I have two. So I've got a serious one and a fun one. So the serious one is The Green Mile.
Yeah.
Love The Green Mile so much. Like after watching that movie, I just was kind of stunned for about 2 days.
Yeah.
It was so heartfelt and just hit me hard. And then the other one, I just love Actually. I love the music. I love the actors. I love the story. I just think it's fun and such a good feel movie.
How about your favorite place to vacation?
Oh, let's see. My favorite. Well, in the whole world, I really love Paris. I really love Paris.
Nice.
It's a very fun, romantic place to be.
Favorite musical artist?
I love I love a lot of music. I love a very diverse, broad spread of music. And over the years, I'll tell you, my first concert was the Go-Go's. My oldest brother brought me to the Go-Go's with my best friend in 1983, and I love that. So, but my very favorite artist is Bruce Springsteen.
I thought you might name someone from the 80s, since you said you're a kid of the 80s, so that's definitely 80s.
Mm-hmm.
What is the first thing you do in the morning?
This is really lame, but I pick up my phone.
Yeah.
Look at my phone. I put my slippers on. I take my dogs out.
That's good.
I have 2 dogs. I take them out.
Title of the last book you read or your favorite book?
The title of the last book I read was The Housemaid by Frida, and I can't think of her name, but it was a good book. And one of my favorite books was The Devil in the White City. It was a true story placed in the late 1800s at the World's Fair in Chicago. So good. Really,
I've heard a lot about that one.
Yeah.
What food can you not live without?
I love, macaroni and cheese. Love macaroni and cheese, but also Thai food is my favorite. Like if my husband's going to say, what do you want to order for takeout? And then he's like, okay, that's not Thai food. So
have you gone to Thai Delight in Westfield? Have you tried that one
I have
yet?
not.
It's actually really good. It's off of 32. It's actually very, very good.
Okay.
I hope they get some more business. It's very good. It's not
Thai
far from
Delight in
Thai
Westfield.
Delight from not far from Grand Park. It's very good. Favorite sport to watch?
Pretty much anything where I can get a hot dog and a beer. But I love to go to an NFL game.
You haven't done that new challenge. I've heard about it. I don't think it's new, but they're talking about this challenge where you drink a beer an inning and eat a hot dog an inning. So 9 beers and 9 hot dogs. You haven't done that, have you?
No, thank you. Not that hardcore.
That doesn't sound good.
I love to go to an NFL game, but I went to my first Fever game last night, and so super fan now. That was really a lot of fun, and they won, and so it was great.
Caitlin wasn't back yet, was she?
She was not, but she was there, and she was seriously cheering them on like a champ, so it was great to see that too.
Awesome. Best advice you ever received?
Okay. My father was really always giving out a lot of good advice. And so, I think it's probably, one of those things along the lines of, just don't take yourself too seriously. When you make a mistake, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep moving, but do not let it drag you down, because we are all human and we all make mistakes. It's something along those lines.
It's kind of the American way, too. I mean, Americans are much more, we fail and we get back up, and it's not necessarily the case everywhere. That culture of failing and then succeeding. So.
Yeah, that was one thing that used to really concern me with kids, with my kids. If they were like, I don't want to try that because I can't do it. I can't, This is how we learn.
Yeah.
Get out there and try it. Yeah.
So last question is advice for a young person who wants to be a leader, who wants to be in your position one day? What's the best advice you'd offer?
Well, do not let it stop you if you haven't done something before. So many times I had no business stepping into, I had never run a presidential campaign before, and I got asked to do it. And right away I was like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. Run a 65 country government to government organization. No problem. Had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I'd figure it out. And pretty much anybody can too, show up at the Department of Energy and, be chief of staff in the Office of Nuclear Energy, you know, and it's, I hear people today talk about something, what do they call it? Like phantom or something where like you're kind of fake it, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't buy that. Like, it's just you're figuring it out. And I'm not going to do it the way Nate Feltman would do it. I do it the way Suzanne Jaworowski would do it. And I have mentors and I have people I like to model after because that's the way they do it. Yeah. But, you just do it. What the outcome you need to do. Figure out a way to do it. And don't think there's just a mold of this is the way to do it. Just go and make it happen, And I think it holds people back a lot when they think, oh, I'm not going to do it right. And there's not always a black and white to everything to do. And I think that holds a lot of people back.
I love it. And I was going to ask you, maybe I will. You've got that takes confidence. That takes desire to take risk, okay with taking risk, and you've done that in your career. So where did that come from? I'm deviating from the speed round because I find it so awesome that's your attitude, because I think I kind of have a similar attitude. I think about it as you only live once. Why not go for it?
I can tell you exactly where that came from. So I have 3 brothers. I was the only girl. So my father, I think, tried to overcompensate for me, and I can't tell you how many times in a week he would say to me, Suzanne, you can do anything you want. And I thought I was like ignoring him after a while because he would say it all the time. And he would say to me, you want to be a brain surgeon? I'm like, no. And he's like, you could be a brain surgeon. You want to be an astronaut? I'm like, no, I don't want to be an astronaut. You could be an astronaut, and it was just constantly. And I didn't get straight A's in school. I didn't, nothing like that. But he was always telling me all the time, you can do it. You can do anything you want. You can do anything you want.
Yeah.
And I somehow believed him.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's a great lesson and a great story. 100%. So
I think I have more confidence than I have capability.
Well, it's I think you've got both, but I want to thank you for being on the Indiana 250 Off the Record podcast. You're an awesome guest, and I want to thank you for doing the good work that you're doing on behalf of the Governor Braun administration and on behalf of Hoosiers. It matters, and I know you're making a difference. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. To learn more about other leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list, go to Indiana250.com and look for a Page 2 feature each week in IBJ. We'll be back with the new Indiana 250 Off the Record conversation soon.
Curious about what's shaping law in Indiana? From court reforms and NIL rights to mental health courts and energy commissions, the Indiana Lawyer Podcast breaks down the biggest legal issues of our time. I'm your host, reporter Maura Johnson. Join me every other week for your insider guide to what matters in law and why it impacts you. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app or at ibjpodcasts.com.
On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.